This lakefront property had been mine for years. I knew exactly where my boundaries started and ended, so when strangers began wandering onto my land, I decided to make the message clear. I put up one simple warning sign. I didn't block the public road. I didn't interfere with anyone else's property. I simply placed a sign inside my own boundary. I wanted everyone to know that this was private land. The HOA president saw the sign the very next morning. Linda didn't like what it said. Instead of asking me about it, she accused me of violating HOA rules. I told her the sign was on my land. Linda pointed at my sign and ordered me to take it down. I asked her what rule gave the HOA authority over my property. She couldn't give me a straight answer. She simply repeated the same demand. I told Linda I would listen if she could show me the actual rule. She opened her clipboard and started searching through papers. But nothing she showed me gave the HOA control over my land. That should have ended the argument. Instead of leaving, Linda pulled out her phone. She told me she was calling the police. Apparently, she believed putting up a sign on my property was somehow trespassing. I just smiled and waited. A few minutes later, 2 police vehicles arrived. Linda immediately pointed toward me and started explaining her version. The deputies listened without saying much. Then one of them walked over to talk to me. The deputy asked me why I put up the sign. I explained that people had been entering my private property. Then I showed him exactly where the property line was. His expression changed when he realized what Linda had reported. I showed the deputy my property survey. The warning sign was clearly inside my boundary. There was no mystery about where it stood. The paperwork made that obvious. The deputy turned back toward Linda and asked her a simple question. Why had she reported me for trespassing on my own land? Linda suddenly had no clear answer, and that was only the beginning of her problem. Linda wasn't ready to give up. She suddenly claimed the sign violated the neighborhood's appearance standards. The deputy looked at the sign, then looked at the property boundary. It was obvious she was changing the argument. Linda finally produced the HOA rulebook. She pointed to a section about signs and decorations. But the deputy noticed something important. The rule applied only to common areas and HOA-controlled property. The deputy explained it to her very simply. The HOA could enforce its rules where those rules legally applied. But my private property was outside their authority. Linda finally realized the sign wasn't going anywhere. Then Linda finally admitted why she really hated the sign. She didn't like that it reminded residents that my land was private. People had been using the shoreline without asking me, and the sign was stopping that. The deputies walked the boundary themselves. They checked the survey markers and the fence line. Everything matched the documents I had shown them. There was no evidence that I had crossed onto HOA property. The deputies explained that the dispute was not a criminal trespassing case against me. They told Linda that my warning sign was on my own property. If the HOA disagreed, it would have to use the proper legal process. They weren't going to remove my sign for her. Before leaving, the deputy gave Linda one final warning. She was told not to enter my property without permission. He also told her not to misuse emergency services over an HOA disagreement. Linda didn't like hearing it, but she couldn't argue anymore. Linda finally turned around and walked back toward her vehicle. The deputies remained until the HOA group left the property. Nobody touched my sign. Nobody ordered me to remove it. After the police left, I walked back to the sign. It was still standing exactly where I had put it. The message was simple and completely legal. This was private property, and I intended to keep it that way. The HOA came expecting me to surrender my own property rights. Instead, they learned that a loud accusation doesn't change a property boundary. The police confirmed the truth, and my warning sign stayed exactly where it belonged. Sometimes the strongest response is simply knowing what you legally own.